Hey guys, before we dive into today's episode, I just wanted to give a couple Patreon shout outs. So, I record my podcasts ahead of time, and sometimes I record them so far ahead of time that I have to go back and put these intros in. And I've already uploaded the one for next week, and whatever, doesn't matter. Here's some shout outs. I have 4 new patrons so far this month, so huge thank you. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining. Linda, love you, Linda. Nikki's are the best people in the world, I'm telling you. And Jesse just joined as I'm recording this a few minutes ago. So 4 new patrons this month, guys. I had a goal for 10, so I just need 6 more. And if you would like to join my Patreon, you can do that at patreon.com/NikkiTheDeathDoula, but you'll hear more about it in today's episode. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and we'll get on to today's episode. Hello, and welcome to Good Grief, a podcast dedicated to demystifying, destigmatizing grief, compassion, and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And today we're going to talk about grief and the body. A while back, I had done an episode on emotional pain and what that meant, and how grief can manifest itself in our body as emotional pain. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about the physical aspect of this pain and the physical symptoms you might feel along with grief, how, why, and what we can do about it. I've talked about some of these things in the past, or at least mentioned them on an episode or two. We're going to dive a little bit more into each one here and kind of go through a nice list, because I like me a good list. But before we go on, if you haven't already, if you could take a moment and review this podcast, leave a little star rating and say a couple words about why you're listening, why you like it here. It helps other people find me so more people can get the benefit of this podcast that you are. And if you feel so inclined, maybe tell a friend about it. It's a real quick and simple thing you can do to help me out. Okay, so grief and physical symptoms. Most of us think of, when we think about grief or any type of emotional or mental trauma, issue, pain, illness, we think of that feeling in your gut. It feels kind of like you've got a big pit in your stomach or a rock, or you can't breathe, or you get some tightness in your chest and you feel like you're going to cry. Like most people talk about that. And that is very, very much a physical symptom of any type of emotional distress or trauma, also known as grief. But there are a lot of other symptoms that might come along that we don't always talk about. First one, fatigue. Fatigue's a pretty simple one. I've talked in the past about grief manifesting itself and making you feel tired, and how sometimes when people are grieving, they just want to sleep all day. That's all they want to do is just sleep. Well, fatigue is probably one of the most common symptoms, and there's a reason for that. Grief and emotional pain takes such a huge and tremendous toll on your mind and your body that it oftentimes leaves you feeling just completely drained, both physically and mentally. Why is that? Well, sometimes there are things going on in our body that we don't even know are happening. Like, let's say, for an example, you spend the day outside at the beach with your family, and you're kind of just laying on the beach on a nice blanket, soaking up some sun. You might get up and go splash around in the water, but overall, you're just kind of taking it easy and relaxing. That evening, you might come home and be incredibly exhausted, because while you were just relaxing and enjoying, your body was actually working really hard to keep itself cool, to regulate all of the UV rays coming in on you, and you might even have a little bit of dehydration you didn't realize you had because of being out in the sun. Your body, this whole time you were just relaxing, was still working really, really hard. And a lot of these things are happening while we're grieving as well. You know, we might feel like we're just laying around, but our brains, our minds, our heart, our spirits, our souls are working overtime. And that can be physically draining even when you don't realize it is exhausting you, which is why a lot of times you'll feel fatigue. And you might notice you feel really tired after a day of studying for an exam. You know, you might just be sitting at your desk if, you're in school or in college or whatever, studying any kind of thing. You might spend an entire day just sitting at your desk cramming for an exam or really studying hard. And you might find that you are just exhausted, even though you weren't doing anything but sitting there. Well, again, your brain was going, your mind was going, and even if you weren't moving, your body was probably tense because you're nervous about this exam. You've got so many things on your body, you've got so many things on your mind. Your body's reacting in a way you're not even noticing because you're too busy thinking about this exam. Just like our bodies might be going through a whole lot that we're too busy to notice because we're grieving. Another super common thing I've mentioned many times in this podcast, insomnia. Kind of the opposite. Insomnia and fatigue can go hand in hand. You can be exhausted and still not be able to sleep. You might find it really hard to get quality sleep. You might be sleeping, or you might be fatigued and laying around a lot, but you're just not sleeping, or you're not sleeping well. Well, once again, very similar situation. You've got a lot of things going on in your mind that's causing your body to react. I have noticed myself, a lot of times when I have a day when I've done a lot of exciting things, I can't sleep that night, even if it's fun things, because I have really bad anxiety. And there's always, I'm being honest here, you guys. There's always something in the back of my brain that tells me I did something stupid that day, and people are thinking about it, right? Even if I'm not actively thinking, did I say anything stupid today? That's in there somewhere because of my anxiety, and that's rolling around in there. But also, my adrenaline's been up all day because I've been doing exciting stuff, and it takes a while for my adrenaline to come back down again. Same thing going on if you have a lot of grief going on in your body, or if you're stressed out, if your partner died and now you're worried about, not just your emotional well-being, but your financial well-being. There's a lot of stress and anxiety that might come along with a loss. Or if your loss isn't a death loss, if you lost your job and you're grieving that, there's a lot of stress that might be involved in this. And when we're really stressed out, our anxiety's peaked, our adrenaline's going, and it's going to make it hard to get good quality sleep. You might be tired, you might lay in bed, but you might even, I'm using air quotes, sleep, but you're not getting deep quality REM sleep that you need to rejuvenate yourself. Another physical thing you might notice, I've mentioned this one as well, changes in appetite. You might be eating more, you might be not eating at all. I know for myself, when I'm really upset, when I've gone through real emotional traumas and mental health issues, my eating stops. Like I'm not hungry. The thought of eating food makes me nauseous. Putting any kind of food near me and I can just feel my stomach already recoiling. Some people are the opposite. When they're really upset, they eat more. They might binge eat. I did a little bit of reading on this, and it was actually incredibly interesting. Part of why we might stop eating during mental or emotional upsets, sometimes our bodies might get stuck. And I talked about the adrenaline, which is why we might have trouble sleeping. You've got adrenaline going. But your body might get stuck in that fight or flight response. And when your brain is in that area and it's triggered, your brain will also produce your appetite suppressing hormones. So basically it puts eating on hold so that your body's focusing on survival. I've heard the term the breakup diet before. This is something that popped up in my research again. But, when you go through a bad breakup, a lot of times you stop eating for a little bit. Your brain and your body are in a chaos. And at that point, a lot of times your mind and your body, I talk about that a lot. Your body's smart. It knows what it needs and when it doesn't need it. Sometimes it gets tricked, right? So it thinks we're in a survival situation. Things are bad. So let's put everything on hold and just focus on keeping us alive, which you would think it would want to eat. That's not necessarily true. When we get to like a lower form of stress, your body and your brain might start producing cortisol and serotonin, which is when you're kind of seeking out those comfort foods, the things that make you feel a little bit better, your mac and cheese, for me anyway. But emotional eating and not eating is incredibly common. It's a big one and something almost everybody's probably noticed. So you might also notice physical aches and pains. I talked at the top of the episode about that like feeling in your gut, like, oh, it just like feels like there's a rock sitting in there and you kind of feel like you just want to like explode or barf or something or cry. You've just got that feeling inside, just like a pit in your stomach and it just sits there. Well, that's one of them, but you can also get things like headaches, stomach pains, muscle tension. And again, this goes back to your body and your mind doing things without your knowledge, without your consent, so to speak. You might find that you're clenching your shoulders a lot and you don't realize you're doing it. I do it unintentionally all day long. My massage therapist gives me crap about it every month that I gotta relax my daggone back sometimes. But you might find yourself like really clenched up a lot and you don't realize you're doing it. And then you start getting real bad pains in your shoulders, in your neck, in your back. You might be hunched over when you're upset because you've got that feeling of smallness and you want to just curl up into a little ball. Or maybe you're in a mode where you're sleeping a lot and you're laying down a lot. I know, like, I can't sleep past 7 o'clock or I get a headache. Sometimes just laying down for a long period of time will give me a really bad headache. So it could be something, with how much you're sleeping or how little you're sleeping or tossing and turning a lot. It could cause a lot of aches and pains, headaches, things like that. Another physical symptom, weakened immune system. It happens. It's really interesting, but that happens. It's not as common, but prolonged grief can weaken the immune system, causing an increased risk of illness and infections. It's, again, not super common, but it does happen. If you isolate yourself, if you're not exposing yourself to other people and other germy things, your immune system doesn't have anything to play with. So it gets a little out of practice. So think about that. If you're one of those people that when you grieve, you just isolate and you stay away from everybody and everything for months on end. A few other things, digestive issues. I will not go into detail on mine because no one needs to hear that, but I do have IBS. I have really bad bowel issues. And I know my trigger foods. I know what foods will cause me to have spikes and issues, but they're emotional issues. Emotional things can cause my IBS to spike, for me to have certain uncomfortable situations with my intestines, to put it nicely. But you might notice that. Other little things you might notice that aren't as common, but have been reported, things like breathing difficulties. I know myself sometimes when I'm really upset, I might feel like I need to take deeper breaths. And it's just because I'm, hunched over and I've got that, I'm doing it right now. You can't see me. I've got that stature of somebody who's real upset, kind of hunched over, heads down. And it doesn't give my chest much space to expand, so I'm not breathing fully. Or if you're laying around a lot and your lungs aren't working as hard as they would on a normal basis, they might weaken a little bit. That happens. Anecdotally, I spent a week in the hospital a long time ago. I had a terrible infection that nearly took my life, and I didn't move much for days, like about a week. I was just laying in a hospital bed, and my breathing got so shallow, and I started getting pneumonia. So I had to do all these breathing treatments then on top of that. It's a weird thing that happens when you spend too much time resting. So high blood pressure can happen occasionally, chest pains with that. And chest pains can be real or imagined. I'm not going to ever tell you your pain is imagined, but it could be a pain of something actually happening, or it could just be that feeling of heaviness in your chest, that rock, the rock in your gut I talk about. And other things like rashes, skin irritations, like those things can happen. They're not as common, but they can happen. So if you are grieving and you notice some weird little things going on that you weren't expecting, like skin rashes or, maybe chest pain or breathing difficulties, I mean, go ahead and take it seriously. Especially if you're having breathing difficulties or chest pains, for the love of God, go see your doctor. That could be serious. Don't miss a heart attack, guys. Okay. And I have to PSA, heart attacks present very differently in women. Okay. They're not going to present themselves like they do for men. You're not going to get that sharp pain in the chest always. You might, but sometimes it's just pain in your back or in your arm or your neck. Okay. If you're having any of those symptoms, call 911 immediately. I have to say that. PSA. All right, that's out of the way. So grief is natural, and a lot of these things your body does might be natural too. But what can we do about it to help alleviate some of these issues? If you are able, if you have the physical ability, get up and move around a little bit. Go for a walk if you can. Like I said, if you spend a lot of time laying in bed, it's going to cause a lot of health issues. It could cause a lot of physical symptoms, and it could cause a lot more problems. Just get up and go for a spin around the block. Something small. Do something small to get yourself up and moving. Don't just sleep all day. I know you want to, but if you can get up and move a little bit, it's going to make a big difference. If you're having trouble sleeping, try some meditation. I've heard yoga, like before bed, there's some yoga routines you can do that just kind of helps your body develop that melatonin it needs to get to sleep. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse. I can't advise medications or any type of, even over the counter. I'm hesitant to suggest those. That's a conversation you should have with your doctor. If these are interfering with your life, though, go see your doctor. He might tell you that it's safe to take some melatonin to help you sleep. I am not going to tell you that because I'm not a doctor and I don't know you and your medical history. So don't do that because I said so. Do so because your doctor said you're okay to do that. Okay. If you are having the trouble with eating, if you're having a change in appetite, it might be really hard to force yourself to eat. So take stock of what foods you react better or worse with. Okay. I know for me, like when I'm having real bad emotional pain, like I'll just have a very specific example. I was going through a lot of emotional distress with, the loss of my brother, things like that. And I was having some mental health crisis and I just wasn't eating. And somebody was eating a bowl of oatmeal in front of me and I just about threw up on the table. I like oatmeal, but man, at the wrong moment, just the look and the smell of oatmeal can really turn my stomach. So if I'm having a real bad time and I'm not eating, oatmeal's not going to be the thing I'm going to go to. And I'm probably not going to go to super harsh foods, nothing spicy. Find something like some crackers or some bread and butter, something real easy that's not going to rip up your stomach, not going to give you any trouble. It's a little easy to digest, things that you don't react to. Find some nice gentle foods and just eat a couple bites. Don't force yourself to eat a whole meal if you're not feeling like it. With your physical pains, your aches, again, do some yoga, some stretches, get out and move a little bit. That might help loosen up those muscles a little bit. Walking, swinging your arms a little might help loosen up your back a bit. Any other issues, if you're having trouble with breathing, if you're having really bad digestive issues, if you get other symptoms that are bothersome, call your doctor. And don't let him brush you off, or her, sorry, doctors are women too. Don't let your doctor brush you off and just say you're just grieving, it's fine. Speak for yourself, let yourself decide, but, advocate for yourself a little bit. But let them just double check for some things and make sure there's nothing else going on. But they might have a good plan for you. They might come up with something really good that might help you get through whatever it is you're going through so you can come back on the other side okay. All right. Well, thank you. I hope you got a little something out of that. And if you've ever felt one of those things, you're normal and that's okay. All right. We're at the end of the episode. So it is time for the end of life deck. Because I'm doing the end of life deck and not the death deck this week. Because I haven't done the end of life deck in a minute. All right. I'm going to shuffle them up. While I'm shuffling, have you guys gone to Patreon yet to support me? You should. It's pretty fun. You get access to my podcast a week early, get some grief affirmations. Might get some Q&As coming up here pretty soon. You should come check it out. All right. Patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula. And our card this week. Okay. Ooh, this one's a little deep. Reflection. What life achievements are you most proud of? Ooh. That's a big one. And I'd love to hear what your answer is to that. For myself, I feel like the go-to answer people give for that is their kids. And that's a fantastic achievement. I don't have that, though. I didn't have children of my own. So my biggest achievements, I would probably say buying my house. It might not have been the smartest move when I did it, but it turned out to be the smartest move because the housing market in my area exploded. And currently, I would never have been able to afford to buy a house or even rent one. I don't think I could afford to rent a studio apartment right now. So I'm really glad I bought my house when I did, but I did that by myself. I mean, my husband helped obviously a little bit, He He helped with the down payment a bit, but everything was in my name. I did that all myself, and I was very proud of that. My other one would probably be starting my own business as an end-of-life doula. Am I making millions of dollars? No, I'm not really making much of any money, but that's okay. I did that. That was a thing that scared the heck out of me, and I did it. And here I am, making this podcast for you all now. So I would love to hear what your biggest achievements were in life. I really honestly would. Please let me know. You can find me on all the social medias at Nikki the Death Doula. Well, not all of them. I'm just on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. But that's my handle for all those, is Nikki the Death Doula. You can also find me at nikkithedeathdoula.com. Or you can find me on Patreon. I mentioned that earlier, Nikki the Death Doula. There's a theme here. I don't know if you've noticed that, but yeah, it's mostly my name with the word Death Doula next to it. All right. I'm being ridiculous. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. I hope you're having an amazing week. Please like, follow, rate, review this podcast. It would help me out astronomically, and that doesn't cost a penny. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, as always, your grief is yours. Your feelings are valid. Grief doesn't always have to suck.